We now have a new head, or we will have a new head of the SEC. That is going to be Mary Jo White, who Barack Obama is tapping for that position. But anyway, we have substantive reasons as well to be opposed to her. Now, let's start this off by saying what the New York Times in their reporting on this is saying. And that is, in its choice of Miss White, the White House is sending a signal about the importance of holding Wall Street accountable for wrongdoing.
Okay, that amused me to no end.
That was the article I read
New York
yesterday,
Times,
and I was like,
New York Times is saying
they're gonna,
Oh, yeah, well done.
you know.
Yeah. Okay, so now the reason they say that is because she's a former prosecutor. She was the head of the Southern District Attorney's Office in New York, and that's the people who are supposed to be regulating Wall Street. Now, she made a reputation for herself as a tough prosecutor because she went after Gotti and people like that, and the mob, etc.
She also convicted, I think, 100 people for white-collar crime, which is the most anyone's ever done.
Okay.
As a prosecutor.
Now, you have to understand that there's some of the things that are misleading, and this is the least of her problems. First of all, going after Gotti and the mob is actually incredibly simple. They're not going to hire Mary Jo White later. It's not like she had the possibility of working for Gotti afterwards. The bankers are going to hire Mary Jo White after her position at the Southern District, and before her position at the SEC, and after her position at the SEC. So if you're a real tough guy, exactly, you'd go after that revolving door, and you'd go after the bankers who hire you through that revolving door. She's not that kind of tough guy. And the white-collar criminals, oftentimes what they do is they go after small fish, right? And then they go, you see this guy? And in fact, of course, at UBS, they threw a rogue trader under the bus, the only black guy they had in the bank. I don't know if he was the only one, okay? To be fair, but he was black, and he was like 20-something years old.
He's like, not the only.
Okay, but they're like, we got him, okay? But what they don't do is go after the top executives. So then Mary Jo White, after the Southern District, goes over and works for the big law firms, where she makes millions of dollars being a white-collar defense attorney for the banks, including Ken Lewis of Bank of America, representing Morgan Stanley when they were considering hiring John Mack, which we're going to get into in a second. But the New York Times doesn't tell you the millions she made doing that. They don't tell you what we're about to show you. Instead, they say, look, tough on crime, Mary Jo. Well, this signals they're going after Wall Street. My ass, it does. I mean, that is horrible reporting. In fact, that reporting was so bad, the New York Times got embarrassed by that sentence and removed it from a later version of the article. Okay. That's how bad that was.
they're merciful, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, so you alluded to some of the other problems with her. And one, this is sort of a complicated case, but it involves Gary Aguirre, who is one of the low-level SEC regulators, who at one point was investigating Morgan Stanley's former CEO, John Mack, who was going to be rehired, I believe, by Morgan Stanley. And so we have some interesting quotes in regard to that. Aguirre, an SEC foot soldier, is trying to interview, by the way, a major Wall Street executive, not handcuff the guy or impound his yacht, mind you, just talk to him. In the course of doing so, he finds out that his target's firm is being represented by the former U.S. attorney overseeing Wall Street, who is going 4 levels over his head to speak directly to the chief of the SEC's enforcement division. Aguirre didn't stand a chance. A month after he complained to his supervisors that he was being blocked from even interviewing Mack, he was summarily fired without notice. The case against Mack was immediately dropped, all depositions canceled, no further subpoenas issued.
So now, let me clarify. The person that Matt Taibbi is talking about there that went 4 layers above Aguirre, Mary Jo White. Okay, she's there to protect John Mack, the banker for Morgan Stanley. She's a private attorney for the bankers at that point, but she knows all these people in government because of the wrong door that John was talking about.
That's what she's hired for.
And she goes and she talks to the guy and says, get Aguirre off of this. Why? Aguirre has made the terrible mistake of actually trying to do his job. He's like, look, as Taibbi says, I'm not trying to arrest the guy. I just want to investigate a little bit because this looks like insider trading and it looks like something we're supposed to investigate. They fired him. They fired him for doing his job. But Mary Jo White will be really tough on the bankers. Now, laugh along with us. How weird that President Obama, who's a progressive liberal, who's going after the bankers and going to be stand up for the middle class, would pick the top representative of the bankers to run the SEC, who's supposed to oversee the bankers.
I gotta say, that's kind of how government works. And if you, this is a crazy idea, but if you really wanted to get someone tough, you get a populist conservative, authoritarian Republican who's from a middle-class background and has never lived in New York and worked in finance, but can read the laws to go after them.
Now, here's the part.
Someone who's mean and nasty.
Yeah, here's the part that I agree with on that. Somebody uncorrupted by Washington. You're right, Wes. I don't give a damn if it's a conservative or a liberal. But unfortunately, the Republican Party has been taken over by the virus so thoroughly that I'm left in a position where I don't trust almost any Republican in the country. If they're a party official,
oh, no, I don't mean a party official. I mean
Yeah.
someone who's like the county whatever in Georgia or
the
Alabama
guy's making
or
those
something.
ads with like the shotguns on a horse and
That's
stuff.
the guy.
Right? Yeah. That guy, if you can show me that he's not hooked on donor money,
and that he knows the law.
I'd take him over a so-called liberal that Obama picked any day. Just anybody who's actually gonna do the job and who's a little pissed, to Wes's point.
And now, what's of course, there's it's sort of a compromise. Like he puts her in charge, and so we're not going to get actual regulation of the banks. But to be fair, on the flip side, Obama is going to get a ton of credit from Republicans for being so nice about the whole thing. But so we can go into the we can go into the specifics about where she's, I think, committed major derelictions of her duty. But let's skip right past that to her general philosophy and how she's going to approach regulation of the banks or not approach regulation of the banks. And let's go to this final quote. In February 2012, White expressed doubts at a panel at New York University about whether banks had committed crimes ahead of the financial crisis. She warned against trying to prosecute mistaken behavior, what is even reckless risk-taking. So that's where she's coming from.
So she says there in that panel, no, what the bankers did, it's not illegal. I mean, she said at the end of that, and I saw the panel, she said, we don't want to get caught up in a frenzy, right? Like, for a frenzy of prosecution for the largest fraud, financial fraud in American history. You wouldn't want to get caught up in a frenzy.
Yeah.
And so basically she's saying, I'll slap their wrist and go, tut, John Mack, who paid me millions of dollars just a couple of years ago, and Bank of America that paid me millions of dollars a couple of years ago. Obviously, I won't prosecute you. Obviously, you're free to go. But next time, just watch it a little bit. Oh, well, thank God she's the head of the SEC.